So, what do you want to talk about until lunch? Good choice of topics. That's exactly what we planned on talking about, so I'm glad you mentioned that. Future-proofing tomorrow's carriers today. What does that mean? Well, basically it means that the telecom sector is being disrupted by all sorts of new technologies and new kinds of business models. The carrier business is no exception, but you can plan for that, and you can actually be a part of that future of the digital economy if you know what you're doing. Supposedly, these three guys do know what they're doing. We're going to talk about that for the next 30 minutes or so. Where are my panelists? Get my panelists up on stage here. Come on here, guys. Please welcome to the stage, in no particular order, Marc Halbfinger, CEO of PCCW Global, and Stephen Ho, CEO of CITIC Telecom International CPC, and last but not least, Andrew Kwok, President of International and Carrier Business for Hutchison Global Communications. There they are. I don't know if I'm on. No, I'm not. Okay. I'm going to stick with the podium if you don't mind. You guys can sit, I'll stand. How about that?
Okay.
Fine, whatever you do.
Okay, I knew you'd agree with that. So basically you have 4 people from Hong Kong here up on stage. The organizers wanted me to mention that. I have no idea why, but it must be important. So let's talk about the future. Let's talk about the future of the digital ecosystem, and specifically, I want to start with asking each of you, how do you see the role of carriers like yourselves in this coming digital ecosystem? Where do you think that you fit in, and is that any different from where you fit in now?
Stephen, go ahead.
No, you are the most senior.
Okay,
Stephen, you're closest to me, so you can start off.
Andrew's the most serious, though.
Mark is the most senior. And also Steve. Yeah, we can carry on this one for another 10 minutes. How about that?
So the future. You want to know where we fit in?
Sure. Where do you fit in?
In our mind or in the cloud people's minds?
Doesn't matter.
In the mind of the customer?
In the mind of yourself.
The mind of ourselves. Well, we're carriers. We started out back in the 1870s when they invented telephone lines, and even before that, in the 1850s when they invented undersea cables, right? And now here we are, still trying to make our P&L, make our profitability, and all of a sudden, lo and behold, in the last 15, 20 years, some guys have shown up with huge amounts of computing capability without focusing their capital investment on last mile infrastructure, but instead focusing their investment on applications. Those applications are becoming more and more important to end users, whether consumers or businesses. How do we fit in? We have to fit in first and foremost by giving the infrastructure that we have and that they don't have. But secondly, we have to try and create commercial relationships between us and those ecosystems that will be valuable not just for them, but also for service providers like ourselves. And in so doing, we're going to have to work perhaps a little bit more closely together in the layer known as the service provider, in order to create a little bit more of a common understanding of service providers with the cloud ecosystem. Is that helpful?
It's a start anyway.
Okay.
So, Andrew.
Okay, I agree with Mark. So,
why do you agree with me? You never agreed with me before.
As a formality, as a courtesy, I have to say this, is it? Although 3 of us, we kill each other from 9 to 5, but we kiss each other after 5. Okay, coming back to this one. So, yeah, frankly, I agree with Mark, but having said that, just to add in one thing is that there will be a space for this kind of so-called traditional carrier. Only the reason is that the fundamental is the infrastructure. If you don't have this infrastructure, no matter why we're coming to talk about the net neutrality, who pays who, blah, 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 and all these kinds of things, cloud, internet, but those are basically riding on the existing infrastructure, no matter it is local, international fixed, or even wireless. So who is going to invest in it? Is there any interest to invest in it? So basically, that's a space for the so-called traditional carrier. But having said that, you have to clearly define which space you want to take it up and which one you want to maintain. So this depends upon on your business model, on the product that you're going to launch, and more important is that you have to change, if you want to join in the wagon, you have to change your financial model, not even the business model. That means how you calculate your NPV, how you calculate your return of investment, and how you book your P&L. Because we are in the so-called fourth industrial revolution, in which I do believe it is happening. So you cannot use your own model to calculate what is your return, and you have to, just like this is my tuxedo already in my day-to-day. So normally I use a pants and also a t-shirt to go to meeting. Those OTT, they accept it. If I wear a suit to go inside, I'm an alien. Even for these kind of things, you have to change.
Okay, we'll come back to the details about the changes you have to go through later on. But Stephen, so do you agree with these two, or do you want to argue?
I don't want to argue. In fact, it makes me feel a bit nostalgic about your questions when you talk about the future. And I want to rewind back a little bit, like in the early 80s, back in Hong Kong, when we were in the analog era, right? The digital exchange that we're talking about, some of them you may feel that it's a very usual thing, but back in the 80s, it's then all analog. And even before that, step by step. So, you go to an exchange and you hear this noise, right? Blah, 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 by, churning the rotary dial of a telephone systems. Why I say that is because we're in a crossroad, as if we were in a crossroads in the 80s. When everything becomes digital, everything becomes electronic, the old guys was, they fear about what's going on, right? When mobile phone comes along, I still remember the brick Motorola mobile phone, that's an analog M systems mobile phone, and subsequently they have text and so on. And people were scared as well because they don't know what's going on, and suddenly you've got people out in the streets and carrying something, and he can talk, he can actually send something, right? It's reminiscent about what was then and is now. Now it's more sophisticated. I think it has generated enormous opportunity. And if you talk about the future, I'm absolutely optimistic. I'm not the kind of guy that is scared like in the early 80s about what's going on when we have all this analog turning into digital. Right now we're in the era of almost ubiquitous connectivity, and the internet and the cloud are generating just enormous opportunity for everybody. Now, so I come back to what Andrew just said. It's about the business model. These are the things out there that you can deploy. You've got to understand it. The challenges, I think, for all of us now is how to gear up our organizations, the people that we know that work for us on the product area, in the engineering area, in the sales and marketing area, how to sell the new stuff, how to put these solutions to the market so that our customer can be able to benefit from it, right? So it's a lot about business modeling, a lot about how you understand these technologies to deploy in your network. I mean, we used to be transports only, but now a lot of people are saying the OTTs and so on are eating away some of the, they are not, they're creating a new revenue stream, a new space for all of us.
Well, let's talk about the opportunities, because one of the things I was going to bring up was that people have negative associations with disruption in telecoms. And they tend to focus on things like the voice market. You're probably one of the few industries where your core market of voice is where the demand is going up, but the revenues are either flat or they're going down. But there's still new opportunities that are being created by disruption. So let's talk about some of those. If voice and SMS and the traditional services are going by the wayside in terms of making money, where are the opportunities that are coming from this disruption that's coming up?
Again, you're looking at me?
You're on the panel, aren't you?
Okay.
You just like the comfy chair? That's the only reason you're on?
All right, I guess.
He's going to have fun.
Well, the disruption opportunities, first of all, disruption by definition is something that we have to learn to embrace. I think that the first component of disruption that we have to focus upon is that services today are being delivered no longer through equipment infrastructure, but rather through software development. And so we have to understand that the cloud-based operators who are delivering, cloud-based service providers who are delivering services, all of their services are software-based. In our business, the so-called telco, we're in a process of slightly slower migration from hardware-based environment to software-based environments. And the faster we embrace the fact that we have to be moving to an almost ubiquitously software-based world, while still carrying forward our legacy revenue streams because our P&Ls require us to do so, the better off we'll be, the faster we move, and yet still maintain some of that value. So we'll start there. Second, I think in terms of the applications, one needs to understand that perhaps the market capitalization, the size of the larger players that we're seeing in OTT has also allowed them to attract some of the better mindsets. Similar to the days when Stephen chose the 80s as a benchmark. If AT&T in the 70s and 80s, for instance, had Belcore, they were able to attract the best and the brightest, and then deregulation led to a shaving off of some of their margins. And where have all the best and the brightest gone now? They're going to San Francisco and to Seattle, where all of those capabilities are. How do we, as telcos with smaller R&D capabilities, get into that software evolution capability in order to get to those applications that will be attractive? First, we'll have to partner with those ecosystems. At the same time, spend some time focusing on what we can identify as appropriate for our markets. I'll just offer one caution, and that is, as we've moved to a software-based environment, geography as we know it is less relevant. And regulators, for whatever reason, have chosen not to get involved in this migration from hardware to software. And as a result, our environments are becoming increasingly disrupted, not just by the move to hardware-software, but the fact that our traditional geographies have been disrupted through the virtual process.
Okay, so to add on, I try to put up some physical example. In the past, when we are trying to craft our addressable market, we always take a look what we have instead of take a look what they have. So I think there are two things that that we are doing already or testing it out, is to follow just what Mark said. We are trying to enhance the OTT market instead of rejecting them, but instead of embrace them. But however, only embracing them is only an idea which doesn't represent any money, any monetary benefit. But how to get the monetary benefit is that they have a whole bunch of customers following them, and you have to admit this one. So you can actually launch some of our services, obviously, hopefully, are those evolved services to their customer base. Say, for example, not an advertisement or whatsoever. Last month, I just launched our very simple service, a prepaid card with WeChat for their customer in China when they come into Hong Kong. So if you take a look, how many customer base WeChat has? More than 600 million. If I'm only taking a look at my little tent in Hong Kong, I'm talking about 7 to 8 million people. No, not every Hong Kong people will buy a prepaid SIM card from me, but however, if I'm cooperating with them, now I enlarge my customer base in a big way. So this is one of the examples, one example. Second, more and more I see that we should turn our traditional asset in exchange for non-traditional telecom revenue. I try to make some example, cook some example. Say, for example, we launch a service with a TV station in Hong Kong, with apps and also their content. We bring them not only to Hong Kong, but elsewhere in the world. And I'm not charging, how many gig of capacity you use up along the line, how many IPVPN circuit you have acquired or whatsoever. But instead, we cooperate with them and pushing into market as a service. I don't even tell my customer, okay, you use these apps on the mobile, and then you have buy 5 gig per month, it is 230 Hong Kong dollar. No, skip away from that. I'm providing you with a service in which the service level agreement, everything, I take care of that. I guarantee the performance. But what you're buying is not a pure telecom service, but instead something that you need, which is, I want to use these apps to take a look at the Hong Kong content every day and live. This is what the customer wants. And behind, we'll fix up the business model with our partner, we'll fix up the revenue speed and everything. I'm selling a service. So this is something non-traditional for the traditional carrier because it's more complicated to calculate. In our old model of return of investment, You put in how much money for a submarine cable system, depreciate for 15 years, 20 years, what is the O&M charges, what is the cable landing station charges, and then we graph out, by means of this pricing, I can get this kind of return. No one care anymore. They only want to buy a service. So this is the 2 points. One is the addressable market. It's an opportunity that you can enlarge it. Another one is that join the wagon of selling a service. Make it as granular as possible, make it as global as possible, and make it as easy as possible.
Okay, Stephen, is that your
I think I'm in absolute agreement. I think the days of the traditional telcos of just looking at their transport and sell either your circuit on a per monthly basis, or even when you're selling the circuit even per megabit, per gigabit, those days are not sustainable, put it this way. And a very good topics about this, the future of telco. I think Andrew is already the future today, partly anyway. But as I've said, right, it's really where the value stack that you want to choose. There's a lot of disruption, but you can make that disruption part of that value stack and put it into a solution. I want to add is a few words here. The word innovations. I mean, we have to continue to innovate. We're not manufacturers that will make an equipment, but the appreciation of what technology can do and use those to innovate new types of services that is compatible with what we're doing. I mean, nobody asks you to, rip away all the fibers and all the cables and so on. But you have to add this, and I think Andrew gave a very good example. It's about the way in which how our CFO calculate their return on investment. If you just by saying, oh, my depreciation curve is 30 years because it's a copper, sorry, I mean, we're out, right? So you have to make sure that on the one hand there is this depreciation, but on the other hand, what are the things that you can add on top of that so that you can accelerate that return on investment back to make it viable. So choosing that various types of various stacks is very important. And I think the challenges, and I come back to that challenges, is how the team within any organization will be able to cope with those things. Because we can say innovation, we can say adapt to changes, we can say agility, we can say all these goodies, right? At the end of the day, you need a team to be able to execute.
Is it also about speed? Because one of the problems that the telcos tend to have, especially compared to OTTs and players like Amazon, Google, and so on, is the speed at which they can innovate. They don't have a very good reputation for that.
Yeah.
Can you innovate faster to keep up with those guys, or do you need to innovate at that particular speed in order to function?
Well, telcos, hardware-based telcos in the old days, where they would test something, we would test something for a year or 2 years, make sure that it's perfect, and then roll it out into the network and have a customer service center. But software-based organizations, and this is another indication of the shift of what happens. They write some code, they roll it out, and they create some sort of online group in order to resolve the problems as they go with every bug that finds. They don't have to make something perfect, they just roll it out fast. So innovation is more about just getting something out there and then letting the crowd effectively help resolve whatever issue exists. That's a mindset that telcos have to learn to accept. I think it's something that we're getting more involved in. The other thing that we need to recognize as organizations, because Andrew was focused on organizational behavior on the finance side, organizations such as ours need to accept automation. We need to make sure that our internal processes are being automated as extensively as possible. If you take a look at the fintech world, or just the traditional financial sector, banks, retail banks as we know it around the world, are starting to lay off people over and over again. From where? From the front end, because they're not needed anymore. And that process of automation, the online apps, all the activities that takes place, we need to do that inside our own organizations very rapidly so that we can allow customers and even wholesale service providers to provision capacity over our own networks without us creating processes in the middle that are somehow a bureaucracy from simply allowing traffic to flow as aggressively as possible around all these innovative ideas that Andrew and Stephen were talking about.
Are you making those internal changes?
We are.
To what
I wish
extent?
we could do them faster. One of the keys, as I've said, is that I think a lot of the knowledge is in the younger generation. And I've been told by my HR department that I'm not allowed to say that we should hire younger people because it might be discriminatory. So we have to
You
take
can't say that.
I can't say that, so, especially here in the United States. I wouldn't say that. So I didn't say that.
Well, it's a good thing you didn't say that. Otherwise
But
you'd
I
be in
think,
trouble.
to be honest, we need to simply be acquiring new skills faster. And we need to make sure that those who have the older skills are trained differently. And we as an organization internally need to accelerate the process of that training to make sure that also people who are older, who may not have been brought up through software development skills, but maybe were hardware skills, that we're taking some time out, keeping them in the organization, but sending them away for quite a while to learn the new skills and come back and re-implement them in the organizational structure, forcing automation as quickly and as aggressively as we possibly can. And we're doing a lot of that in our network. We're opening up this year, we're opening up all of our databases for pre-sales, pricing quotes on local loops. We're just, if Andrew wants to take an API to ours and take that information, he'll be able to do that. So too for customers already on, if they want to automate upgrades and downgrades of their infrastructure online, they'll be able to do that without having to call salespeople in order to structure that environment. All of that information, all of that capability is being moved online. That's within our own customer environment. Now the next step is to make sure that we can do it on a wholesale basis on an inter-carrier relationship structure.
One of the earlier speakers said that a lot of telcos don't know what an API is. I'm impressed that you actually know that.
We have
Well
a
done.
team that's involved not just in API creation, but a separate team that's involved in making sure that those APIs can outface correctly to ecosystems. Andrew's team launched, beat us to the punch a little bit, and we came just after them. We both offer services that tie into AWS. That's obviously can't be done without intelligent APIs. The problem for us with companies like AWS is they want to own the customer separately, and we want to own the customer separately. And I think that eventually those ecosystems are going to need to find a commercial approach that's beyond the technical API, and that's probably the next step.
Okay, Andrew, since you know what an API is Hutchison also going through the organizational changes that Mark's talking about?
Yep. So these are all the operational changes a must. But having said that, you still need to maintain some of the traditional service. Those are the fuel and engine. Those are the fuel for the engine, okay? On the other hand, last year I did around 75-25. 75% is traditional business. 25 is what I regard as a little bit more advanced services. Obviously, I'm not quick enough. But eventually, the main point that I want to bring it up is that I think this whole exercise cannot be bottom-up. You change the people, you change the culture and everything. It's painful. You have to go through it. But with a bottom-up kind of, or even middle management decision, it doesn't work. Because I still believe the fundamental is that the business model, the desire and the way that they want to get back the investment, they have to be top-down and make some decision. I quote an example, John. Microsoft, they got a program called BizSpark that you're familiar with. They put up the whole cloud for all the startup. And then they have an agreement with the startup, you don't need to pay. However, if you are successful, I have a bite, I have a split, okay? Yes, we carrier can do this and saying that, okay, we can do this, or this is a new generation, I have to involve. But I think up till now, what I observe in my limited knowledge is that they treat this one as a charity. They don't treat this one as a business. Is it? Instead going about the scale. Okay, fine, I'm helping several universities, give them a little bit cloud, help. No, this is charity. You have to change in a big scale, just like Microsoft BizSpark. Okay, I have 4,000 startups. I'm filling them with space or even office for them to start the service. And out of all this, the very important thing is that they agreed with the business principle of trial and error. That means it is not like the traditional telco that I put this money, we got to have this kind of return. They said, no. Instead of doing this, I spread out my money. 1,000 companies come to me, business partners, startup, or whatsoever. I expect only 10 will success. All the remaining will fail. You got to have this top-down mindset, and you join the wagon of the new ecosystem. So that's why I say that all the pain mixing up the people, how to do it, equip ourselves with API, relevant engine, data more, eSIM, no matter on fixed or mobile, all this kind of stuff is necessary. But however, it got to come along with a top-down decision.
Okay, Stephen, how about top management buy-in? This is very important for CITIC as well to do this transformation?
Absolutely. I think it's not just top management buy-in. I think the whole company got to be involved in it. I just want to.
But it starts at the top and it has to go down
Absolutely,
from there.
yeah. I just want to come back to a little bit about what Mark was saying about software and automations and so on. Everybody talks about automation for a long, long time. And in fact, in telcos in the earlier days, they want to integrate, communications and computing. I still remember a very famous slogan of NEC about 20 odd years ago, and the slogan is like computer and communications, right? Didn't work very well. I think lack of APIs, lack of open source, lack of standard. I think now we're very blessed in a new era that technology can bring, and all these things got, in fact, sort of merged together quite nicely. But beware, I think we're actually in a curve, an exponential curve of advancement. We probably were, having a low gradient of advancements in the last 20 years, but with cloud computing and the proliferations of internet, we're actually on the curve that we will be upshooting tremendously in terms of advancement. These things will bring about by automation, yes, but also because of the intelligence of the network. The network is getting more intelligence now. It can actually do, we're actually doing models of predictions on the network behavior, customer behavior, and so forth. I mean, using AIs, right? Machine learning and deep learning are part of that equation now. So if you want to look ahead in terms of what the future of telco will do, make sure that, this intelligence, these automations, these AIs are part of that equation.
Okay. Well, I wanted to check with the audience for questions, but unfortunately, we only have a couple minutes left, so I'm going to skip that part and just get right down to the end here, actually. Just the last question that I have for you guys. Given everything that we've just talked about, are you sufficiently future-proofed? Yes or no?
Future-proofed?
Well, that is the title of this panel. So.
I don't think that we're future-proofed because there's no way to cast the crystal ball and see where things are. I can say that I think that I have a view of where the business is going to go, and I think that the physics of the financial components of the business will ultimately future-proof us. What is future-proofing? It's an open market, quite frankly, which will ultimately lead to some element of consolidation, I would gather, in our industry, and as Stephen has just described. So I think that the financial elements of consolidation will ultimately serve to future-proof. I will say this, because we're in Hong Kong, and you brought it up at the beginning, Hong Kong, for those of you who haven't been, is probably a window into the future in terms of what's delivered to the consumer, the amount of bandwidth that's available, the way applications are adopted. Hong Kong, I would argue, is probably one of the leading markets in terms of where the so-called future is. And when you say future to one person in the room, it doesn't mean the same to another. I think Hong Kong is very far down the road and has figured a way to muddle through all of those activities in the B2C space. In the B2B world, I think that the globality of applications in the cloud space, exactly the elements that Stephen is describing, is changing. But let's be clear, bandwidth will still be there. The way it's monetized will be quite critical. The future holds things such as AR, augmented reality, virtual reality, which will require an exponential leap in bandwidth requirements. How those services are delivered to end users in real time will be the next challenge that service providers face. And I think that we're all headed in that direction, trying to find a way to work with the software-based entities. And despite your message to us in the email about the telco being dead, I'll say that we still have a ways to go.
I didn't say it was dead.
You say bad news.
Yeah,
You said several times, John.
you made me cry for about a minute or two. Yeah, it was very bad.
Okay, I'm
We have a
sorry.
morning team here.
I made Marc Halbfinger cry. I'm sorry. I didn't think anyone could make you cry.
No, just kidding, just kidding.
Okay, so Andrew, 10 seconds. Future-proofed or not?
Okay, someone will be future-proof. Is it you or I? It depends
You
on...
personally or Hutchison?
No, obviously, in Hutchison, I have 200% of confidence.
Okay.
However, in the future, how successful we are, I think for those who can really evolve is future-proof. Telecom operator will still be there. Who are those? It depends on the market and also your own capability.
Okay.
I have
Stephen?
a few seconds. Just
Okay, yeah.
Future-proof to me is a myth. It's a myth. Nothing is future-proof. If you want the future, this is the team of the future because we came from Hong
Yes,
Kong.
buy our
We're
share,
18
please.
hours ahead of us.
Yes, buy our share.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the number? Can we announce here?
6823.
215.
Okay, so basically, so in conclusion, this entire panel is a myth and Hong Kong is the future by 18 hours. Well done. Okay, well, give a round of applause to our panelists for a great discussion. Thank you very much. And it's lunchtime, I believe. So you are
Hey, we
dismissed.
said we want to sing a song. Is it right?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, well, join us for lunch next door at the PTC Pavilion in Coral 4 and 5, courtesy of Cheetah Mobile, Inc. Thank you.